Hello everyone and welcome to the Crowcast preview for another week. I'm your host Scorpus as always, and with me tonight on the cast is Phoenix. How's your week been?
Oh mate, not too bad. Just catching Pokemon, mate.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit of a craze going on at the moment, but it's a lot of fun. I think people getting out and about is always a good thing. Of course, we're playing the worst team in the competition this week in Essendon, the Drug Cheats. This is at Adelaide Oval in the worst time slot as well, Sunday 4:10 p.m. local time. We've made a couple of changes this week to the team because, of course, we're playing on Sunday. We're not sure of the final teams just yet, but we do have a squad of 25 available to discuss. Coming out, the big out for us, Taylor Walker, the captain, out with an ankle injury, suspected just 1 week out for him, hopefully. Henderson's also coming out with an Achilles injury. Again, expected to be a 1 week injury there. Coming in, we've got McKay, Seedsman, O'Brien, Wigg, and Miller into that squad of 25. The interesting things there is that both McKay and Seedsman are named on the ground, and our bench is made up of Thompson, Laird, Miller, Lyons, Smith, Wigg, and O'Brien. So 3 of those players will be omitted tomorrow at 5 p.m. Victorian time. Phoenix, who do you think will be the final ins for us?
Well, look, mate, no, it's a very interesting selection. I mean, they haven't gone like for like on Tex for a start. They've brought in someone who they dropped on form and didn't show anything in McKay and put him named on the ground. It's a bit of a raffle, really. I would think O'Brien and Wigg get a run. Yeah, I mean, that's O'Brien. Surely O'Brien and Wigg get a run, which makes it a bit of a lottery. Probably Miller comes out, and I wouldn't mind betting that Thompson is a lay out, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really interesting week for the selection committee because I think a lot of us were expecting Mitchie McGovern to come out because, of course, he was pretty much invisible in the Geelong game and his form's been a bit down over the past couple of weeks. But with Walker's injury, they've placed him at full forward on the team sheet. So I think they're backing him in to do that role. But I agree, it's pretty disappointing to see McKay back in. We were just discussing before we went live about how he had the worst game of an Adelaide Crow this season, I think, against Collingwood. He was absolutely atrocious. He's played no SANFL games since then. He was the travelling emergency last week. So, yeah, it's just a really odd choice to bring McKay in. I agree. I'd like to see one of the young guys debut. I think when you're playing the weakest team and at your home ground, it's a great opportunity to give someone a run. Personally, I don't think O'Brien will be brought in. I just can't see us bringing in an extra tall, and I don't think he's all that capable up forward if we were going to play him up there. But I'd really like to see Tomo given a rest and Wigg to be brought in for his debut match because he's really been tearing up the SANFL. And if you're going to rest a player like Tomo, you may as well do it against Essendon.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I think the issue will end up being that McKay will be selected on the ground, but Seedsman getting back in on the ground as well is, in my opinion, not really much of a concern. I think he's best 22 for us.
Yep.
For Essendon selections, they brought out 3 guys, Kelly, McKernan and Brown. And coming in for them is Polkinghorne, Bird, Grimley, Michael, Jackson Merritt, and Mason Redmond. So that's 7 changes, I think, or 6 changes into their squad of 25. And probably those first 3 are the most likely to be selected. But it's really hard to tell with them because they've got a lot of depth players playing, let's just say, at the moment.
Yeah. And really, I mean, Shawnee Mack's apparently crook, so that's a forced out. But,
same as Mitch Brown, who's their 3rd highest goal kicker for the season.
Yeah. Resting Kelly says to me that they're not really coming over expecting to win the match.
No, I mean, after their performance against Brisbane last week, I think it's pretty hard to see them getting even close to us.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just quickly mention the last match that we played. Of course, this was our blowout win of the season last year, round 2015 at Etihad Stadium. We demolished the Drug Cheats by 112 points. We kicked 11 goals in the last quarter for 27 goals in total. 14 of our guys kicked a goal, including Nathan Van Berlo. And Betts had 5 goals, so pretty good effort there. Best on ground for Essendon was probably Brendan Goddard with 34 touches. So, of course, since that time, they've lost a number of players from drug suspensions. And just looking at their defence at the moment, I think this is where we'll start today. They've only got one key defender, and that's Michael Hartley, Phoenix.
It's a weird-looking team, isn't it?
It's really weird.
I mean, it doesn't actually look like a proper team, to be honest. It looks like a bunch of names. I really don't know how they match up, to be honest.
I think this week you'd probably have to put Hartley on Jenkins and then their random bunch of other guys on all our other targets. It's just odd.
Well, Hartley's the only one that can go on him, really. And then it's a raffle after that, really. I can't see any real matchups in their defence, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because Aaron Francis, of course, the pick 5 from last year, is playing his second game. He's a... pre-draft, I think he was more touted as that rebounding defender utility type player, just over 190 centimetres tall, but he's probably going to have to play, key defence almost on someone like Tom Lynch or Mitch McGovern, so that'll be...
I'd see him on Lynch, actually. It'll be actually a good learning experience for him on Tommy Lynch. Certainly give him a workout, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they might chuck someone like Ambrose back into defence, maybe, who's another tall guy in their team that normally plays forward. I think the one matchup that will really suit Essendon is McDonald, Tip and Woody on bets. But apart from that, it's hard to say.
I would hope that during the week, Pikey and his old teammate, Woosher, have got on the phone to each other. And Pikey's gone, we got a bit towed up by Geelong's strategy. Would you mind playing the same tactics? And we'll just see if we can work our way through it this week.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to mention a bit later is the defensive flood, because I think that's the tactic that we'll see rolled out again by Essendon.
No doubt.
They've been a very defensive team this season. I mean, they're still second for most points conceded for this season at 280 goals, so that's 16 per game average.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Geelong's really given the blueprint for other teams of how to shut us down in that defensive zone. So, Phoenix, how do you think that we combat it?
Well, we got to drop the eyes and hit up targets. On reflection, I think we tried to play like Hawthorn. We played a very kicking game last week, which is very Hawthorn-esque, trying to pick through their zone. But the problem is that we didn't actually carry that through to the full length of the ground, and because we moved the ball so slowly, we just ended up having no options. We've, in regards to how our team combats it, I'd like to see us run and use aggressive ball movement. We're not a quick team, but any team can look quick when they're moving the ball well. So I would like to see us be more adventurous and more aggressive by hand, get that kick-to-handball ratio back where it should be. It was far too lopsided last weekend for one reason or another. And I think we need to run at the defence and then drop our eyes and hit up short targets going into 50.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the one thing that we're going to see throughout this match is Essendon trying to chuck as many of those mid-sized targets into defence, and a lot of their midfielders would just crowd up the space down there. And the one thing that we can do is use speed, as you said. I think the key thing that Essendon probably won't be able to achieve, which is what Geelong did, is reading the ball out of the air. Geelong were just in the right spots at the right times pretty much throughout the entire match, just reading those windy, wet conditions perfectly, and of course they shut down the corridor at the same time, so they did that dual zone defence that you were mentioning in the review cast, I think it was. So I just can't see Essendon having the tactical skills to do both of those things. So we will most likely have quite good access through the centre of the ground in being able to play our running game.
Yeah.
And really, when the pressure comes on Essendon, we saw them against Port at Adelaide Oval earlier this year, they just folded pretty much. They tried to flood their defensive zone, but it only works so well. And we all know Port's forward line is significantly worse than ours, even with Walker out for us. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
I will kick the TV in if I start seeing us kicking to unmanned defenders. If it gets to that, I really would like to see Pikey man up forward this week. It's something that we should have done last week, I reckon, in retrospect. And just made it a contest up forward, at least, even though it was going to be crowded. But to just continually kick the ball to loose Corey Enright, if we repeat that this week, it's going to be a hell of a shit game to watch.
Yeah, and there was two real issues with us kicking into our forward line last week, and the first one was kicking to them on their loose guys like Enright, as you mentioned, along our forward 50 line. So we never even got it into the forward 50. We just, from defence or from the midfield, would just blaze up and hit up, Taylor, Enright, those sort of guys. And the other issue was, of course, when they started chucking 2 or 3 extra defenders into our forward line, that we just did not hit up a single target all night. We constantly kicked to outnumbers. We kicked to the wrong spots. Our forwards didn't lead. So, yeah, as you mentioned, one of those ways to combat that is man on man, or just, lowering the eyes, being a bit more clever with our forward 50 entries and trying to work our way through that sea of players that will inevitably be down there. But
well, I mean, the problem is when you push up your high half forward so far, we have Lynchy and Tex, even though Tex is not playing this week, that position goes up really high, almost a half back at times. And we therefore rely on dragging those defenders up with us so that we can then get them out the back. That's been the tactic. But you get a defence that sits back and lets, the midfield be accountable for those high half forwards, and all of a sudden you've got an issue with numbers. So I think we need to play a little bit smarter this week. Certainly continue our strategy because it's worked for us all year. But our midfield need to work harder in transition, and I think that's probably, aside from the tactical mismatches, I think our midfield didn't really work hard enough with their two-way running last week. So I'd like to see an improvement from them, and hopefully if Harry Wigg gets a run, he injects a little bit more speed into the mids.
Yeah, it'd be great to see Wigg in there. I mean, our midfield in general bats a lot deeper than Essendon's. We know that they're playing, probably about 5 or 6 depth players, top-up players, whatever, throughout their midfield. They really only have 3 targets that I can identify through the midfield that we really need to look out for, and that, of course, being Zach Merritt, David Zaharakis, and Brendan Goddard. And those 3 guys, I think, even our midfield probably has the wood on them in quite a way. You chuck in Sloan, Brad Crouch, and Matt Crouch, and you've pretty much got those 3 guys covered, and then, we've got our depth players, and well, they're not even depth players, our good other midfielders in there as well. So, yeah, I think we'll have pretty much the wood on them throughout the entire midfield zone and clearances. I mean, they were smashed in clearances and inside 50s. No, they won the inside 50s against Brisbane last week, but they were smashed in the clearances. So, yeah, convincingly won the wooden spoon.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a couple of blokes for us that surely need to have big games. Richie Douglas needs to have a big game. Scotty Thompson, if he plays, needs to get his possession count back up and get his effectiveness back up. Mitchie McGovern needs to find the ball, particularly now that the forward line's been cleared out a little bit for him to show his stuff.
Yep.
And D-Mac, if he's going to get a charmed run into this best 22, he'd want to show why he was selected this week, because be stuffed if I can tell.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of other people that I'd identify as well. I think we had Cameron was quite a decent target for us for the Geelong game, but he just wasn't converting those opportunities, and we really need him to start, kicking those clutch goals when needed for us to start winning those tighter matches. Not that this will necessarily be a tighter match, but it'd be nice to see Cameron hitting up some of those guys. I think Laird, he was down on his best last week as well. He kind of butchered the ball at times.
Yep.
And yeah, I think Jared Lyons was quite good in general, and if he can keep up his solid performances, I think he'll keep managing to cement his spot in the team, even though he's named on the bench at the moment. And it's great to see as well Seedsman coming back in, which I think is probably our best long kick. He's been very serviceable for us early in the season, so if he can start, penetrating through their midfield zone, it'll go definitely a long way to us winning this match. How about the forwards, Phoenix? I have an interesting stat for you here. So Essendon this year has kicked 154 goals throughout the entire season. Our top 4 goal kickers, so that is Jenkins, Walker, Lynch, and Betts, have combined for 156 goals. And we've, of course, kicked 268 goals in total. So that's quite a stark difference for the forward line this week.
Well, their forwards must have if you took Cooney out, their average age must be about 12 and a half, wouldn't it? It's a very, very inexperienced forward line. You've got obviously Danaher, who's a great white hope down there. Parrish has been doing well. Fantasia's had some good moments, and Cooney is obviously an ageing champion. Surely this forward line, with our defence and our defensive structure, shouldn't be able to kick more than about half a dozen goals.
Well, you'd think so. I mean, just looking at their goal kickers throughout the season, they've only got 3 forwards with more than 10 goals kicked this season, one of those being Danaher, the other Fantasia with 24 goals, and Mitch Brown, who's not even playing this week, has kicked 19, whereas we have 8 forwards with more than 10 goals, including guys like Douglas, Lyons, and Cameron. So we've got a big discrepancy in firepower between these two teams. And another interesting stat here, Joe Danaher, he's only ever kicked 1 goal against the Adelaide Crows from 2 matches, and that goal was in 2014.
Yeah. He'll provide Tails with a bit of a test. Just he's quite a sizable lad, and obviously got some talent. Got some kicking woes that he needs to sort out. But he won't let Talia have it all his own way. But I just don't expect them to trouble us. So, they'll get a little bit of supply because their first-tier midfielders are pretty decent, Zaharakis and the like. But I just don't see them getting enough service up forward, and I don't see them having enough firepower up forward to really cause us any trouble whatsoever.
No, I mean, I think you basically chuck Talia on Danaher and maybe Lukey Brown on Fantasia, and you've pretty much shut down their entire forward line. Unless they put in some midfielders. I mean, they've got Ambrose down there who's kicked barely any goals this season. They've got Laverty and Langford, who are 2 very young players. They're both mid-sized forwards, but, we've got a number of targets up forward for us in defence, for us that will be able to take those guys. So,
no doubt.
An interesting thing, Phoenix, if we played our defenders as forwards in this match, do you reckon they could kick more goals than Essendon?
No, and I'd actually like to see Jake Lever open his account this week. In fact, I think if he doesn't open his account this week, the questions need to be asked about his commitment to goal kicking. Because if ever there was a chance for him to run off and cause a bit of havoc up forward, no, I reckon if they switch the team around, I reckon if we paid our SANFL team, Essendon would struggle, to be perfectly frank with you.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with the SANFL team is our forward line. But even then, I mean,
we've still got Harry Deer and Keenan Ramsey, and
but Essendon's forward line sucks. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd really like to see one of the defenders like Jake Lever float down and kick a goal. Last match when we kicked 150 points or whatever, 170 points, I don't think a single defender kicked a goal in that match, even though we had 14 goal kickers. So it'd be really nice to see Lever come down. And on Lever, I mean, I can't even see a matchup for him, so he's just going to be floating around in defence, mopping up everything. So,
yep. And there's a bit of a competition, obviously, between the 2 Kyles and Jake. None of the 3 of them have opened their account at AFL level. Tiles has obviously kicked 1 or 2, I think.
Yep.
So I would actually like to, without being ridiculous, I wouldn't mind betting that we'll see those boys try to drift down, particularly if we got the match well in hand in the second half.
And we've seen guys like Cheney and Lever both take marks inside 50, but they both blew their chances. So
yeah, well, Cheney kicked a point. Cheney kicked a point, and Lever got deer in the headlights syndrome and inexplicably played on when he had a set shot available to him about 45 metres out. So hopefully, if they do get a chance, they keep their composure a little bit more.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think that Lever stuff up was, quite bad for him. The other thing I want to touch on just briefly is how much of a blowout we think this game's going to be, because we've talked a little bit about how Essendon will probably employ defensive tactics like they've done throughout the rest of the season, but they've still had quite a number of games that have been reasonable blowouts. They've had 7 matches where they've lost by more than 50 points and 4 matches where they've lost by more than 75 points. And their games against top sides, they lost to Geelong by 30, Sydney by 81, North by 14, Hawthorn by a huge 108 points, GWS by 27, and West Coast by 78. Those Sydney, Hawthorn, and West Coast games were all home games for those teams, and I think that's probably where we can really take a lot of advice from and look at how they did it, because that's the sort of target I'm looking at for this match. What are you thinking, Phoenix?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think those games that they did reasonably well at were all in Victoria. I can't see them travelling particularly well to Adelaide. Essendon don't travel here very often anyway. Um, so I'd be very surprised if we won by less than 10 goals. I'd be actually quite disappointed if we won by less than 10 goals. I know it sounds a ridiculous thing to say when you're talking about a supposedly even competition, but in this case, I think it's 15 goals at least, or else we've basically lost the match.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. It's really tricky to make these sort of predictions because you can never really know how your team's going to perform against a really poor side. But if we're serious about pushing up for percentage and really shutting down the Essendon team, we really should be kicking 15 goals plus in this particular match.
Well, I do think there is a few players, as we both pointed out, that need to actually perform. Having lost last week, I think. It blokes need to be on their mettle, and I think there's a few blokes, as we pointed out, that will be looking to have massive games, and hopefully, that gets rid of any complacency that might creep in.
Yeah, definitely. I think Pike would have really ripped into them for some of the individual performances this week, hopefully in private, so they're not too shattered. But some guys really need to step up this week, and even guys like David McKay, who, as we mentioned before, hasn't played for last week, but he also needs to step up and show that he's not just a list clogger. So yeah, if everyone's really fit and firing, this should be a big match for us, and hopefully we can restrict them to a low score and get it done, get some percentage boost, and really take it to, I think, GWS, Sydney and Geelong, who we're fighting out for that top four position. And we've got a couple of tips in as well. Both American Crow and Damp Squid in the chat have said that this game should be 60 plus pretty easily, and I definitely agree there. So that probably does us for the little look at the Essendon game. Who do you think is going to be best on ground, Phoenix?
Look, pardon me. I'd expect Sloaney, probably. I think he'll be off the chain a bit. They obviously haven't got the firepower to sit hard on him with a tag or whatever. I would expect Sloaney to rack him up this week.
Yeah, I'd also nominate a guy, I think Matty Crouch or Brad Crouch. Those two will probably combine for quite a lot of possessions this week, which would be good to see because we haven't had a huge game from Brad Crouch just yet. None of those 40 touches matches yet, so it'd be good to see him get back into the best that we know him of. So yeah, I guess that wraps us up and we'll get straight into Game of Crows. So just like our team performance last week, none of the guys that put in tips for Game of Crows got up. No surprises there because we were pretty bad and none of our guys really performed that well to make any season high predictions or anything like that. Joel is still leading the leaderboard with 8 points. And Phoenix, what is your prediction for this week?
All right. Well, maintaining the theme, I'm going to predict that both Kyle Chaney and Jake Lever kick goals this week.
Not even just one of them? You're going to go both?
Both. Because I'm going for double points. I have to go for double points.
Okay.
I have to go for a 3-pointer.
We'll give you a 3-pointer for that one. I'm going to go nice and safe that we will kick a season-high 23 goals.
That's not even worthy.
Well, it meets the criteria. It hasn't happened this season. We've kicked 22 goals twice, and I think when we're getting down to these matches against really shitty teams, that 23 goals is a decent target. And keeping in mind, we kicked 27 goals against Essendon last time, so it's not completely out of the question that we'll kick less than that, but we'll see. We'll
kick 30 this week.
Now, that would be a decent enough prediction for a 3-pointer, I think, but I'll stick to the 23 because I've been shocking all year. I could do with some nice points. We'll move on to the SANFL team. We're playing Port Adelaide in the Showdown this week. This is Sunday, 1:40 p.m. at Adelaide Oval. This is also televised on Channel 7, so if you're interested in our SANFL team, you can tune into that or stream it as well through the 7 apps or whatever. We've got some big ins for us this week. It's really great to see Sam Shaw back in the team. He's missed a huge 15 weeks with his concussion, so he's apparently ready to go and he'll be back, which is great to see. It was really sad to see him go down all those weeks ago and not be able to make it back so soon. So, yeah, great to see him back. Troy Menzel's also back after 4 weeks with concussion. He'll be providing a target up forward for us finally. And Lukey Loudon also back from his injury complaints. We're still missing Otten, Van Berlo and Knight, but we'll be placing a pretty strong team this week, I think, Phoenix.
Yeah, although if Harry Wigg gets selected, that'll take a little bit out of our midfield rotations because he's obviously been very good. And if Harry comes in for, say, a Scotty Thompson, there's no guarantee that Scotty would actually play in the twos. I'd imagine he'd probably rest. So we might be a little bit light on for options in the middle. But certainly it's fantastic to see Sam Shaw back and all the very best to him. And also great to see Troy Mental coming back in as well. Hopefully he can find some touch.
Yeah, I think the Shaw inclusion is huge for us because our backline in the SNFL has been swamped recently, especially with Otten missing. So that adds another key defender there to go alongside Alex Keith, because at the moment we were really just playing Keith as one key defender, and
That's
then
right.
We've got Doty kind of filling in as that extra guy down there. But we'll see Duday, or however you pronounce his name, in his true position. It's Duday, is it?
Duday, I think.
Duday. Oh.
I think it rhymes with today, so it's Duday.
Duday. Right. Well, we'll have to have him on the Crowcast so we can find out for sure how he pronounces it. But yeah, it'd be good to see him perform. And I think him and Hampton are the two guys I really want to see step up, because Doday, he against these sort of youngish teams like Essendon, Brisbane, the shitty teams, it would make a good opportunity for him to debut. Not that I think he will get a debut, unfortunately, but it would be nice to see him get into maybe even just the emergencies, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd love to see Kirtley continue his good form. He's hit the ground running since he's been back up and playing, and he's a sneaky little wild card if we do need someone running off that half-back line come finals time. You almost would have preferred to see him in for a run than McKay, but obviously he's a bit short on fitness. But hopefully Kirtley can continue his form and maybe just pose a question or two at selection.
Yeah, it's been really unfortunate with the injuries to both Menzel and Hampton, because I think earlier in the season when we had Seedsman go down and we brought in Henderson for those matches, and a lot of us were very disappointed in his performance, that's almost the time when I think it would have been really nice to see Hampton get a run in the AFL squad, because I think he's got the talent to really push Henderson back to a permanent depth spot in our team, or maybe even become a free agent or trade bait situation for him. But yeah, he's just been decimated with injury, unfortunately. And of course, Troy Menzel as well has missed a lot of matches, and he would have been almost the ideal replacement this week if we were going to give McGovern a little spell in the twos. But with Walker coming out and Menzel being concussed for the last 4 weeks, it really has been very unlucky for him. And I really would have liked to see him play AFL this year, but I just don't think it's going to happen, to be honest.
No, it's a shame. Our two of our three major recruits haven't been able to get on the park. Obviously, only the seed getting up. The other lad, speaking of recruits that I think needs to have a good game, is Dean Gore. He's been a little bit down, not getting a huge amount of touches. He's an in and under midfield. It's going to be a bit of an in and under game, I think, against Port this week. So be good to see him get back on with some good form as well.
Yeah, it's interesting with Gore. I think we knew at least from his VFL form that he was being quite good in the Geelong squad in their seconds last year. And of course, he did have a couple of games out last year with injury. In fact, I think he had a significant amount of games out. So he's probably coming from that little bit lower fitness base than some of our other midfielders. I'm not sure whether he had a full preseason or not, but I imagine they'd definitely be working on his fitness into our, if he really wants to push into our AFL team, which is known for being, pretty fit at the moment. But yeah, I've been a bit disappointed with his SNFL form over the past couple of weeks, and I think he's still probably more chance to stay on our list for a long time than someone like Grigg, who I think is almost certain to be delisted. But Grigg's numbers have been better, let's be honest, over the past month or so.
Yeah, Grigg's been quite solid. I think Dean Gore may have hit a little bit of a wall. He's still a young player, and as you rightly point out, interrupted season last year. I don't know about his pre-season status, but playing like a bloke who probably could do with the rest, which is obviously not possible. So be good to see him find some touch this week.
Yeah, and of course with Gore, I think some of his matches earlier in the season in the SANFL were quite good. He was racking up, 25 plus disposals and getting quite a lot of tackles as well, which is always good to see in the SANFL, where that can be a little bit harder to achieve than AFL. But yeah, he's definitely quietened down a little bit, and that's even with some of our midfielders progressing to the AFL squad, like Jared Lyons, for example, who's no longer in the SNFL team. So
yeah,
if we can get Gore up and firing for next season, he could start pushing up into contention, which would be great to see.
Yeah.
Moving on to our other matches of the round, there's a number of interesting ones for finals calculations this week. We'll start with the Friday night match, Geelong versus the Bulldogs down at Simonds Stadium. The Bulldogs have been absolutely decimated with injuries this week. They've got 5 key outs, including a lot of their defensive players. I think Boyd, Morris and Suckling are all out. And of course, there's 2 horrific injuries last week to Wallace and who's the other guy? Redpath?
Redpath, yeah.
Yeah, so huge amount of injuries for them, and I think they're going to struggle down Simonds Stadium, to be honest.
Yeah, I've got a sneaking suspicion about this one. I think the Bulldogs are playing on a lot of emotion this year, and none less than their bloody coach, who seems to cry at a drop of a hat. I reckon they're going to give a good account of themselves, actually.
Oh, you reckon with all those injuries that they've copped at the moment?
Yep. I reckon they're going to play with a fair bit of heart, and I wouldn't mind betting that they come closer than a lot of people think they will.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to disagree with you there. I think they're going to get absolutely reamed down at Simonds Stadium. It depends, because we've seen a lot of hot and cold performances from Geelong. They've pulled it out twice against us, unfortunately for us, but they've really, performed quite poorly in some of their other matches, but just that home ground factor for them. A lot of their poor matches have been away from Simonds, so yeah, a bit of chatting as well about this match. American Crow says, will they find a way to choke? And Dan Squid says, hope they choke on a fur ball. So nice one there, but yeah, I just can't see them dropping it, but you never know.
Well, the Bulldogs play a completely different style to us, and they do play a style that won't make Geelong's tactics of last week effective at all, because the Bullies will run at them all day. So it'll depend on how Geelong adapt, and whether the Bulldogs actually have enough manpower to cause them problems.
Yeah, I mean, PJ Crows in the chat says that skilled stadium suits the Bulldogs' press, and I'd agree. I mean, they play quite a lot of zoning in their defensive area, I guess, and on the narrow ground down at skilled stadium, that would probably work a little bit more in their favour, being able to crowd up Geelong's forward line, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that match goes. We'll move on, though. We've got another key match for finals, North Melbourne versus St Kilda at Etihad Stadium. St Kilda, they're 2 games out of the 8, I think, at the moment, which is quite a narrow margin at the moment, and they're playing the team that's currently sitting 8th. So if St Kilda really wants to get into finals contention, they've got a horrible percentage, so they're going to have to keep winning, and that would start this week at Etihad Stadium on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't know about this one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a hard one to tip. I tipped North in the end. I think they pulled it out a little bit last week in their match against Collingwood, and I think that'll probably continue when they're facing St Kilda. But St Kilda's been fantastic on Etihad Stadium this season, and they've got the fire and passion.
That's the issue for mine. I think St Kilda are playing pretty good footy at the moment. I'm quite happy that we're not playing them in our little run home. And I wouldn't mind betting that they give North a bit of a shake. North has still got Waite out, haven't they?
I know, Waite's back in this week.
Oh, he's back in this week, is he? That might tip it a little bit, because I think he's probably the best of their forward line, if he's fit and firing. It'll be a interesting game, close game.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be very close, and definitely one to watch on Saturday night. The other match on Saturday night is Brisbane versus Port Adelaide, and that probably won't be a too exciting match, so we'll be switching over to North versus St Kilda. The other match which could have an implication on finals, is Collingwood versus West Coast at the MCG. This is the Saturday twilight match. I found this match really hard to tip because Collingwood, while they weren't that impressive last week, their form has been a huge turnaround since earlier in the season, and West Coast are quite bad away from home, and they almost, they snuck over the line against Melbourne last week on their home deck. They're in rubbish form, so I tipped Collingwood.
Yeah, it's tempting, isn't it? I think I'm going to stick with West Coast on this one, but not with any huge amount of confidence, to be perfectly honest with you. Just based on ladder position and the fact that Collingwood weren't that great last week. But again, another match that could go either way. If West Coast don't turn up, then Collingwood will get a sniff, and then it's anyone's game, really.
Yeah, and of course, if Collingwood does end up winning, it will help us in the finals race. I don't think West Coast will be a huge, contender for the top four when it comes down to it because of their quite tough run home, but any match where we see a player outside the top eight take down someone in the top eight will help us. The one thing that we really need to happen is probably Western Bulldogs beating Geelong would go a long way to helping us, and so would Carlton beating Hawthorn. That's really not going to happen. And if GWS can fall to Richmond at Manuka Oval on Saturday afternoon, that would also help us as well. But I can't really see any of those situations playing out because Richmond are terrible, Carlton are terrible, Freo aren't going to beat Sydney, so yeah.
The only one that I could see possibly falling our way is the Bulldogs-Geelong game. Probably better for us that Western Bulldogs win rather than Geelong. But aside from that, I can't see any of the games this week helping us at all.
Yeah, which is unfortunate for us because it'll be a really tight race back into the top four for us. But the key thing this week for us is we need to get our percentage up. We need to come out with a huge win over Essendon, and if we just keep winning throughout the rest of the season, that will place us in a really good position to get into that top four position that we want. So, yeah, it's not really in our hands at the moment, unfortunately, as far as top four is concerned. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting matches to watch this weekend, Phoenix. So I think that probably wraps us up for the Crowcast preview. It's been a good one this week. Of course, you can follow us on all the usual social feeds on Twitter, Facebook. We're at BF Crowcast there. Give us a review on iTunes because that really helps us become discoverable, I think, up against other podcasts in the AFL space. So, yeah, we'd really like you to do that. And, of course, you can mention us to all your Adelaide Crow supporting mates. That goes a long way to helping us as well. You'll be back on Sunday, Phoenix, for the review cast, and I think this will be a good one because we'll have a lot to discuss about our big victory, I assume. So,
well, hopefully it'll be a happy one.
Yeah, I mean, we did win 8 in a row, so
yeah. Well, I was going to say it was a bit strange actually reviewing a loss last week. It's like, it's a bit of a downer. We haven't had to do this for a while, but it also resulted in a pretty lively discussion too. So. Yeah, but it would be nice to get back on the winning track this week.
Yeah, when you can discuss those players that aren't playing well, there tends to be a lot more that you can discuss as opposed to a win. But I'm expecting, 20 out of our 22 players on the day to perform well on Sunday. And apart from the time slot, which is terrible, it'll be an interesting one to match. And I'll be watching on Foxtel, I think. And of course, don't forget to check out the rest of our casts. We've got Tuesday Night Live. Of course, you can give us a little listen on that one as well. We'll be back live on this cast Thursday, 7:30pm as always. And The Crowbar, give a listen to them as well because they do a great job with their unique take on Adelaide Crows podcast. So thanks everyone for tuning in, getting your tips for Game of Crows, and we'll catch you next week.
See you later.